We thought we knew what it was going to look like, and then somehow every single day got more unexpected, stranger, and honestly, way more entertaining than the last. So trust me, you are going to want to see what happens next. Some islands are known for beaches, some for mountains, and some for the things they protect best. Today is about the treasures of the Cook Islands, both natural and handmade, from rare black pearls grown deep in remote Pacific lagoons, to giant kites flying across turquoise water, to traditions stitched carefully by hand over months. And somehow, all of it feels completely connected to this island. Saturday morning in Rarotonga begins. A music drifts through the stalls. Fresh tropical fruit stacked in bright colors. The smell of local food filling the air. And the deeper you walk into the market, the more it feels like stepping directly into island life. Nobody rushes here. People stop to talk, laugh, share stories about what they make. And honestly, that pace becomes very easy to get used to. And then you notice them, black pearls. The Cook Islands are famous for them, especially pearls cultivated in the northern atolls like Manihiki, where the lagoon conditions are ideal for pearl farming. Unlike traditional white pearls, these naturally develop darker tones from black-lipped oysters, creating deep silver green and charcoal colors, depending on the light, and no two are exactly the same. The process itself takes years. Farmers carefully protecting the oysters and monitoring the water conditions, while the pearl slowly forms layer by layer inside the shell, which somehow makes them feel even more valuable, because nature still decides the final result.
So basically, oysters here are producing luxury jewelry underwater, while I still struggle to fold laundry correctly.
Different skill sets, Joe. The market keeps unfolding the longer you stay. Fresh coconut bread, handmade carvings, local musicians playing island songs in the background, children weaving between stalls, while tourists try very hard not to buy absolutely everything they see. And what makes this place special is not perfection. It feels real, warm, relaxed, the kind of place where conversations matter just as much as the things being sold. Then the pace changes completely. Muri Lagoon, one of the best kitesurfing spots in the Pacific shallow water, reliable trade winds, and enough open space for beginners to learn safely. At first, the lagoon looks peaceful. Then suddenly someone flies across the water attached to a giant kite moving at surprising speed, and the calm disappears very quickly. Kitesurfing somehow combines balance, coordination, wind control, and confidence all at once, which immediately explains why professionals make it look easy and beginners look deeply negotiable with gravity. The kites pull high overhead, boards slicing across the lagoon, spray catching the sunlight as riders move effortlessly across the shallow water. Then suddenly, someone lifts briefly into the air before landing smoothly again. Fast, controlled, almost weightless. And for a moment, physics starts feeling optional.
I respect this sport, mostly because my balance has already rejected the idea entirely.
Honestly, self-awareness is underrated. What makes Muri special is not just the sport itself, it is the atmosphere around it. People learning together, laughing after wipeouts, helping each other relaunch tangled kites. Nobody takes themselves too seriously, and somehow that makes the whole experience even more fun to watch. Because even when someone falls into the water, 5 seconds later, they are laughing about it again, which honestly feels like a healthy life philosophy. Then everything slows down again, from speed and wind to patience, precision, and tradition. Tivaevae, traditional handmade quilts, deeply connected to Cook Islands culture, bright fabrics, detailed stitching, patterns inspired by flowers, leaves and island life, and every single piece made carefully by hand. Some Tivaevae quilts take months to complete. Groups of women often gather together to sew while talking, sharing stories, and spending time as a community. And suddenly you realize these are not simply quilts. They are part of celebrations, family milestones, and cultural identity throughout the islands. The closer you look, the more detail appears. Tiny stitching, perfect patterns, carefully balanced colors, the kind of patience that feels genuinely impressive and slightly intimidating if your sewing skills stop at emergency button repair.
I once tried fixing a shirt and accidentally made the sleeve smaller than the other one.
And that is why nobody handed you quilting equipment. Then comes the final evening, Aroa Marine Reserve. The ocean calm, the sky slowly shifting through orange, pink, and deep gold. A beach bonfire glowing softly against the sand, while waves roll quietly onto shore, and after days of lagoons, mountains, forests, and hidden beaches, everything suddenly feels still. Not empty, not quiet, just settled. People gather naturally around the fire, talking softly while the last light disappears beyond the reef. And somehow the island feels even more beautiful at the end than it did at the beginning. And then it finally hits you. We are leaving the lagoons, the mountains, the island rhythm. And honestly, one of the most relaxing places we have ever stayed. Paradise Holiday Homes somehow lived up to the name a little too well, because waking up surrounded by tropical gardens and ocean air every morning becomes very easy to emotionally commit to. But the adventure is not slowing down, not even close, because next, everything changes again. We leave the Cook Islands behind and head toward Australia. Energy may be about to meet complete unpredictability.
Today might be one of the biggest location changes we've ever had. Yesterday, tropical islands, turquoise lagoons, coconut trees. Today, giant red desert, rugged mountain ranges, and enough open space to make you question how small your car actually is. Welcome to the Australian Outback.
And not the cute kangaroo postcard version either. This is real Red Centre Australia. Dusty roads, dramatic cliffs, dry riverbeds, and heat that immediately lets you know who's in charge. Honestly, I love it already.
Flying into Alice Springs feels completely different from arriving in a coastal city. From the plane window, the landscape stretches endlessly in every direction. Deep red earth, dry river systems, and ancient mountain ranges cutting across the desert. Alice Springs sits almost directly in the middle of Australia, making it one of the country's most famous outback gateways. And the moment you land, you understand why people become obsessed with this place.
It doesn't look gentle. It looks dramatic. Even the colors feel louder somehow. Bright blue sky, red dirt, white trees, orange cliffs. Australia really committed to the color palette here.
Naturally, the first thing we do is rent a proper 4x4 and head west along the Red Centre Way toward the West MacDonnell Ranges. Because if you're going into the Outback, you commit properly.
Joe became emotionally attached to the 4x4 immediately. Within 5 minutes, he was sitting taller, holding the steering wheel differently, and speaking like we were leading an expedition across unexplored territory.
It changes your mindset. The roads open up, the landscape gets bigger, and suddenly every direction feels like adventure.
There's also something weirdly exciting about driving into the desert for the first time. At first it feels empty, and then your eyes adjust, and you realize there's detail everywhere. Rock formations, dry riverbeds, bird life, colors shifting constantly in the sunlight.
The West MacDonnell Ranges are one of Central Australia's most important natural landscapes. These mountain ranges stretch for hundreds of kilometers and are deeply significant to the Aroa people, the traditional owners of this region. The ranges themselves are incredibly ancient, shaped over hundreds of millions of years through geological uplift and erosion.
And standing here really changes your sense of scale. You stop thinking in terms of old. This place feels ancient in a way your brain almost struggles to process.
Our first major stop is Ormiston Gorge. Towering red cliffs surround a permanent waterhole hidden within the gorge, one of the most beautiful natural swimming spots in Central Australia. And yes, in the middle of the desert, there's water.
Not just water, beautiful, cool, clear water sitting between giant red cliffs like nature accidentally built a luxury infinity pool for exhausted travelers. After that drive, getting into the water felt illegal levels of satisfying.
What makes this waterhole especially fascinating is that it remains full even during droughts because it's fed by massive underground aquifers beneath the ranges with unexpected surprises. Just joking. In actual fact, there are no alligators in Ormiston Gorge. Those underground water systems support life like water bugs throughout this otherwise harsh environment.
Which explains why this place suddenly feels alive the second you arrive. Birds everywhere, trees growing beside the water, tiny fish darting around. Meanwhile, 5 minutes earlier, we were driving through what looked like Mars.
After swimming, we take the pound walk track around the gorge. It's an easy walking trail, but the scenery feels enormous. Dry riverbeds, red cliffs, rocky terrain, and one of the Outback's most iconic trees, the ghost gum.
These trees are incredible. Bright white trunks glowing against the red cliffs, like someone placed them there specifically for photographers. Honestly, the contrast looks almost edited in real life.
Ghost gums are particularly interesting because they're considered relict plants, survivors from a time millions of years ago when Central Australia was far greener and more tropical than it is today. As the climate gradually dried, species like these survived in protected areas around permanent water sources.
So some of these trees are basically living reminders that this desert used to be rainforest. Australia really said, what if we changed absolutely everything except a few stubborn trees?
The longer you spend in the gorge, the more wildlife you notice. Rock wallabies move across the cliffs with ridiculous confidence, somehow balancing on steep rock faces like gravity is optional, and colorful zebra finches dart through the dry riverbeds in small groups.
The wallabies genuinely make you feel unathletic. I watched one casually jump across rocks that would require a full safety briefing for me.
The wildlife here is incredibly specialized. Everything has adapted to survive extreme temperatures, limited rainfall, and long dry periods, which makes every permanent water source critically important.
Now, after a full day in the Outback, I've learned something important. There's a huge difference between what I thought I needed for the desert and what I actually needed.
For example, we packed extra outfits, camera gear, travel accessories, and approximately 6 things we never touched.
What we actually needed was water, sun protection, comfortable shoes, and emotional resilience.
The Outback simplifies priorities very quickly.
Also, I underestimated dust. The dust always wins.
As the sun starts dropping behind the ranges, the landscape changes color again. The cliffs deepen into darker reds and burnt orange tones, the shadows stretch across the gorge, and the desert heat finally softens.
This is the moment where the Outback really gets you. It's quiet, massive, ancient, and somehow both harsh and peaceful at exactly the same time.
After tropical islands and Pacific beaches, arriving here feels like stepping into a completely different world in a single day.
A very red world with surprisingly excellent swimming holes.
There are landmarks that look impressive in photos. And then there are places like this, where the moment you see them in real life, your brain quietly stops arguing with the hype. Because today, we are standing in the middle of Australia, looking at something so massive, so ancient, and so strangely alive with color that it almost does not feel real. Uluru. The world's most famous rock, and honestly calling it a rock feels wildly undersized because photos never really explain the scale. You think you understand it, then you stand next to it and suddenly feel like a very confident ant. And the best way to experience Uluru at sunrise is not from a crowded viewpoint. It is moving beside it quietly while the desert wakes up. So, this morning, we grabbed bikes and headed around part of the base trail just before sunrise. At first, the rock looks almost muted, dark brown, shadowed, and calm, but then the sunlight arrives, and everything changes incredibly fast. Orange, deep red, then almost glowing copper. The dramatic color shifts happen because of iron minerals in the sandstone surface, reacting with sunlight and oxygen, almost like the rock is slowly changing mood throughout the day.
So technically, Uluru is rusting beautifully.
That is scientifically simplified, but honestly not completely wrong. What many visitors miss is that Uluru is not just tall, it is enormous underground too. Scientists estimate much of the formation continues several kilometers beneath the surface, almost like the visible section is just the top of something far larger hidden below the desert. And riding beside it gives you a completely different perspective because you notice details impossible to see from far away, curves in the rock, vertical streaks from rainfall, small caves and textures shaped slowly over millions of years. It feels less like one giant rock and more like an entire landscape standing upright, and somehow it keeps changing depending on the light angle every few minutes. Now, here is something nobody warns you about. Trying to take the perfect Uluru photo becomes unexpectedly competitive very quickly.
Because every photo somehow looks either too small, too bright, or like you accidentally photographed a potato in the desert.
Exactly. And there is always one person standing very seriously, adjusting camera settings, like they are negotiating directly with the sun. Meanwhile, the actual experience is happening all around you, while everyone debates angles, which honestly might be the most modern travel problem possible. But as incredible as Uluru is today, is not just about one monolith, because nearby sits something equally fascinating, Katachuta, also known as the Olgas, a collection of enormous rock domes rising out of the desert landscape. And unlike Uluru, which stands mostly alone, Katachuta feels almost like a natural stone city. Massive rounded formations packed tightly together, creating valleys, pathways, and sudden walls of rock in every direction. The closer you get, the larger everything feels, until the domes completely surround you, making people feel suddenly very small inside the landscape. The Valley of the Winds hike takes you directly between the giant domes, where the landscape changes constantly depending on where the light and wind move through the formations. And what makes this place remarkable is realizing these domes were once part of one enormous mountain system over 500 million years ago. Over time, erosion slowly wore away the softer material, leaving behind the harder rock structures we see today.
Nature really commits to projects slowly.
Very slowly, but impressively, consistently, which means this entire landscape is basically geology revealing its long-term editing process. And then there is the sound, because once you move deeper between the domes, the wind behaves differently. It funnels through narrow spaces, creating echoes, low whistles, and sudden bursts of air that bounce around the rock walls. At certain points, even small sounds seem amplified. Footsteps, conversations, and even laughter carrying strangely through the valley. It creates this strange feeling where the landscape suddenly feels alive, not because anything is moving, but because the environment itself keeps responding to every sound around you. And just when the landscape already feels unusual, Australia introduces one of its most ridiculous animals, the thorny devil lizard, a tiny reptile covered in sharp spikes with what looks like a fake head on the back of its neck, designed to confuse predators, which honestly feels both clever and slightly dramatic.
So even the lizards here come with decoy equipment.
Exactly. And somehow that is not even the strangest part. Tiny channels between its scales collect moisture and transport water toward the mouth, almost like a built-in hydration system. And despite looking fierce, they mostly spend their days eating ants, sometimes thousands in a single day, and apparently one terrified human for dessert. As the sun begins dropping, the entire desert changes color again. The domes deepen into dark red and purple tones, while the shadows stretch slowly across the sand. And this is the part visitors often miss. Uluru and Katachuta are not just landmarks you photograph once. They are landscapes that keep changing every hour, depending on light, weather, silence, and distance. The postcard version is really just one moment out of thousands, and honestly, probably not even the best one. A sunrise ride around one of the world's most famous monoliths, ancient domes shaped over hundreds of millions of years, echoes moving through desert valleys, and tiny lizards somehow outperforming modern hydration technology.
This place somehow feels ancient and completely alive at the same time.
Exactly. Today was not just about seeing Australia, it was about understanding scale, time, and just how creative nature can be when given enough of both.
Australia really does not believe in subtle landscapes, because today starts with giant canyon walls, ancient rock formations, and a hidden oasis sitting in the middle of one of the driest places on Earth. And somehow, that is only the beginning. Because later, we attempt a sunrise camel trek across the desert, which sounds peaceful in theory, until you remember camels are very tall and surprisingly opinionated. Kings Canyon rises suddenly from the desert landscape. Huge sandstone cliffs, deep valleys, and rock walls reaching nearly 100 meters high, and standing near the edge for the first time feels slightly unreal, because the scale does not fully make sense at first. The canyon stretches across the landscape like the earth suddenly cracked open.
Australia really looked at normal hiking trails and said, no, let us make it cinematic.
And slightly intimidating, the rim walk begins with what locals casually describe as a steep start, which feels like a very relaxed way of saying your legs are about to negotiate immediately. The first climb is intense. Stone steps winding upward along the canyon wall. And every time you think you have reached the top, Australia politely reveals more stairs. But then, you finally reach the rim, and suddenly, everything changes. The canyon opens completely around you. Red cliffs, deep chasms, endless desert stretching into the distance, and the height becomes very real very quickly. Looking over the edge feels both incredible and deeply personal to your survival instincts. The sheer walls drop almost 100 meters straight down into the valley below, and somehow the silence makes it feel even bigger.
This is the kind of view that makes you forget your own Wi-Fi password immediately.
This landscape was shaped over millions of years. Layers of sandstone slowly carved by wind-rain and ancient water movement. The cliffs you see today were once part of a much larger sandstone plateau. Over time, erosion cut through the rock, creating deep valleys, steep walls, and the dramatic formations surrounding the canyon. And standing here, you can actually see the layers of geological history built directly into the rock itself, which somehow makes the whole place feel even older. Along the rim, the rock formations begin changing shape. Rounded sandstone domes scattered across the landscape, known as the Lost City, because the formations resemble ancient ruins from a distance. And honestly, it does look like nature accidentally built an abandoned civilization out here, only with significantly fewer tourists and much better sunsets.
And importantly, no ancient gym memberships.
A truly peaceful society. Then suddenly, everything changes again. Because hidden deep inside the canyon, there is permanent water, a sheltered waterhole surrounded by towering canyon walls. And after hours of dry desert landscape, the sight of greenery feels almost impossible. Tall plants, shaded pools, bird sounds echoing through the canyon, like discovering a hidden oasis in the middle of the Outback. The area is officially known as the Garden of Eden. But standing here, it feels less like a name and more like nature, quietly protecting something special. This area is deeply important to the local indigenous communities, and visitors are asked to respect the environment and stay on marked paths, because places like this are not just scenic. They carry cultural and natural significance that has existed for thousands of years. And honestly, that respect changes the way you experience the space. It makes you slow down, pay attention more carefully.
Also, this may officially be the first hike where the view distracted me from complaining about walking.
A historic moment for everybody involved. And even in this harsh environment, wildlife appears everywhere once you start looking carefully. Uros, also known as hill kangaroos, move easily across the rocky terrain. Black-footed rock wallabies climb steep canyon areas with surprising agility, which honestly feels unfair, considering most humans are still recovering emotionally from the staircase at this point. And then suddenly, one Euro stops, looks directly at us, and somehow manages to radiate the exact energy of someone silently judging tourists. We freeze. For a few seconds, nobody moves. Then it casually hops away, like it had somewhere far more important to be all along.
That kangaroo definitely looked at us like we interrupted its morning meeting.
And honestly, I think we did bird-life moves constantly through the canyon. Small movements hidden between shadows and cliff edges. The landscape feels harsh at first, but once you slow down, you realize it is full of life everywhere around you. As the day fades, the canyon changes color completely. Deep reds, burnt orange, soft gold across the sandstone cliffs, and somehow the landscape becomes even more dramatic at sunset, because Australia apparently believes moderation is optional. Then comes the next adventure. A sunrise camel trek across the desert dunes, and before this moment, I genuinely believed camels were mostly calm, gentle creatures. Then mine stood up, which turns out to be a full-body experience. Camels were introduced into Australia during the 1800s by Afghan and South Asian cameleers who helped transport supplies across the harsh interior. At the time, camels were perfectly suited for the dry climate and remote distances where horses struggled, and they played a major role in opening trade routes and transport across Central Australia, which means this experience is not just tourism. It is connected directly to Australian outback history.
I appreciate the history deeply, but right now, I am mostly focused on not falling off Trevor the camel.
Trevor absolutely knows that too. As the sun rises, the desert slowly begins to glow, soft orange light stretching across the dunes, long shadows moving over the sand, and suddenly everything feels calm again. The camels move slowly across the landscape, steady, rhythmic, almost peaceful, until Joe's camel attempts a dramatic sideways sit-down halfway through the ride.
Well, why is the ground suddenly so close on one side?
Because your camel just made a personal decision without consulting you. A few seconds later, everything settles again, and honestly, the camel looked far less concerned about the situation than Joe did. What surprises you most about the desert is not the heat. It is the space, open landscape in every direction. No buildings, no traffic, no noise except wind and movement across the sand. And somehow, that emptiness feels calming instead of lonely. Like the landscape is forcing you to slow down and actually notice where you are. Kings Canyon feels impossible at first. A giant hidden chasm in the middle of the Australian outback, permanent water hidden beneath towering cliffs, wildlife surviving in one of the harshest environments imaginable. And somehow every part of it feels completely connected, from the ancient rock formations to the hidden oasis below, to the camel tracks stretching across the dunes at sunrise. Australia does not do small scenery, and honestly, that may be its greatest strength.
We thought we knew what Australia was going to be, and then somehow every single day completely changed the picture, because just when you think you understand this country, it throws something new at you. Giant landscapes, hidden places, strange wildlife, and unbelievable stories, with moments that honestly feel impossible until you see them for yourself. And the wildest part is we are only getting started. So stay with us, because what comes next might be the most unexpected adventure yet. See you same time next week, right here, only on Sky 83.